Eddie Jones, tactical genius or the man who sank the Wallabies? In 2023, he returned to Australia with big promises, but what followed was a coaching disaster that shocked world rugby. The worst campaign in Wallabies history, humiliating defeats, crazy selections, and a Rugby World Cup meltdown. And to top it off, rumours swirled that he was already eyeing another job mid-tournament. So what really happened? Was Eddie the problem or just the scapegoat? Let's break it down. Love him or hate him, Eddie Jones is one of the most polarising figures in modern rugby. A tactical mastermind, a coaching mercenary, a risk taker who sometimes overplays his hand. In 2023, he returned to the land down under with grand ambitions, but what followed was an absolute train wreck. So, what exactly went wrong? Was it Eddie, the players, Rugby Australia, or was the Wallabies' downfall inevitable? Now, before we break down the disaster that was 2023, let's rewind. Eddie Jones isn't just any coach, his resume is almost impeccable. A former hooker for Randwick and New South Wales in the 1980s, he wasn't the biggest or the fastest, but he had an elite rugby brain. That intelligence propelled him into coaching in the 90s, where he left his mark with the ACT Brumbies, leading them to a Super Rugby title in 2001, back when Super Rugby was an absolute dogfight filled with world-class talent. With league exponent Andrew Walker at 15 and Wallabies halfbacks Gregan and Larkham, who some called the best halfback pairing in rugby history. I think that's stretching it a bit.
From Richie McCaw, now it's Samo, and Big Radicki throws a dummy, gets rid of one, Radicki, Samo, clear run to the line, can he get away from them? Samo, 5 metres, 3 metres, over!
The side also included barnstorming Fijian Radike Samo, just to name a few. Basically, this was a team stacked with Wallaby greats. They won the playoffs comfortably, beating the Sharks 36-6 in Canberra. His success saw him take charge of the Wallabies from 2001 to 2005. And in 2003, he took Australia to the Cup finals. Sydney, a packed Telstra Stadium. Johnny Wilkinson's right boot breaking Aussie hearts in extra time. It was close, very close. But Jones wasn't done with the world stage. He played a key role in South Africa's 2007 Webb Ellis win as an advisor, before masterminding one of the greatest upsets in rugby history, Japan's 2015 RWC victory over the Springboks. And that game in Brighton, the one they call a miracle, dude, it was no miracle, it was tactical genius. The Fijian-born captain Michael Leach said,
"It was always going to be a hard battle, it's David versus Goliath, but we've been training for this day for the last 4 years. We worked extremely hard, all the coaching staff and the players, but it was just a full-on team effort."
Then came England, taking them to the 2019 Rugby World Cup final and completely dismantling the All Blacks in the semis 19-7. That was Eddie at his best. Tactical precision, ruthless execution, evidenced by a first-minute strike by the uprights. Never before have you witnessed a team so dominate the All Blacks.
Oh, it's a tough handle at the back there in slippery conditions. Young, yes! England go clear by 15!
Had it not been for Carl Sinclair's first-minute injury in the finals, the whole dynamic of the game against the Boks would have been changed. By 2022, his methods started to wear thin. Players tuned out and England showed him the door. So the Wallabies bring him back in 2023. A reset, a fresh start. Australian rugby fans were cautiously optimistic. Jones had done it before. Maybe he could do it again. Instead, the entire thing blew up in spectacular fashion. The 2023 RWC campaign was nothing short of a nightmare for the men in green and gold, marking their worst ever performance on the global stage. For the first time in history, Australia failed to make it out of the pool stage. The once mighty Wallabies gone before the quarter-finals. Let that sink in.
Australia running out of heart, running out of desire here, and running out of the World Cup.
Defensively, they were an absolute mess. That 46 thrashing against Wales, the worst Rugby World Cup defeat in Australian history. The Wallabies' defensive structure was non-existent. Line speed too slow, missed tackles way too many, leadership on the field nowhere to be found. Wales, with Gats as coach and veterans like Dan Biggar, didn't just win, they humiliated Australia. Then came the Fiji game, a 22-15 loss to a team Australia hadn't lost to since 1954. But make no mistake, Fiji weren't messing around. They were physical, they dominated the breakdown, and they completely disrupted the Aussies' attack. Australia got bullied, sloppy at the rucks, poor exit strategies, and an overall lack of composure. This wasn't just a loss, it was an indictment of Australia's game management. Even before the Rugby World Cup, the writing was on the wall. A 41-17 hammering by France in Paris, a 38-7 thrashing at the MCG against the All Blacks, this team was completely out of its depth.
Look at that timing, beautiful hands, Barrett to Mo'unga, and then Jordan inside, outside, in contact, reaches out and scores. Huge for the All Blacks.
Australian attacking game plan? Virtually non-existent. Their ability to play with tempo? Nowhere to be seen. The Wallabies, once known for their expansive, creative rugby, looked one-dimensional and predictable. Kicking strategies were poor, their counter-attacking game lacked any real threat, and their decision-making under pressure failed repeatedly. The result? Just 2 wins from 9 matches in 2023. That's not just a bad run, that's a full-blown crisis. One of the biggest talking points, squad selection. And this is where things got, let's say, controversial. Eddie made some brutal calls. He dropped Michael Hooper, he left out Quade Cooper, 2 of the most experienced players in Australian rugby, gone. And for what? A squad with an average of just 20 test caps per player, the most inexperienced Wallabies World Cup squad since 1991. Now, let's be clear, investing in youth isn't a bad thing, but doing it all at once in a World Cup year, that's a whole different story. Leadership matters, experience matters, and when the pressure came on, this team crumbled. There were other gambles too. Will Skelton, though a great player in size 19 boots, had limited captaincy experience and was given the armband. And at fly half, Eddie put all his faith in Carter Gordon, an unproven talent at test level. No backup 10, no contingency plan. When Gordon struggled under pressure, the Wallabies had no plan B. These weren't just selection risks, they were all-in bets that backfired. And then there was the off-field drama. Reports surfaced that, just before the World Cup, Eddie Jones was already looking for his next job. Specifically, rumours claimed he had a Zoom interview with the Japan Rugby Football Union on August 25th, right before Australia's warm-up match against France. Jones denied it, insisting he was only sharing insights with a recruitment agency.
Did you do a job interview with Japanese rugby a couple of weeks before the World Cup? And if so, what was the thinking?
I don't know what you're talking about, mate.
But the damage was done. The timing was horrible. The optics were even worse. The Wallabies were in free fall, and suddenly their coach was being accused of having one foot out the door. Fans were furious. The media went into overdrive. And at a time when the team needed stability, this was just another distraction. Was Eddie already planning his exit before the World Cup even started? We may never know, but the speculation didn't help Australia's cause. Jones is known for his intense, demanding approach. He pushes players hard, expecting absolute commitment. Some thrive under that kind of pressure, others not so much. A couple of former England players who were under Jones described his environment as like living in a dictatorship where players operated under fear. That kind of leadership can get results, but can also backfire spectacularly if players aren't fully on board.
He gave me some of my greatest memories in an England shirt. I mean, that came at a price. Like, it was incredibly tough in that environment. It was ruthless. If you said the wrong thing, we saw players in 1 minute, out the next. I challenged him on one selection issue, and I didn't play for 4 years.
By dropping veterans, restructuring the leadership group, and completely overhauling the squad, Jones essentially wiped the slate clean. But without player buy-in, without time to build trust, this time his methods didn't stick.
Like Eddie, for me, he would often pull me aside after training and say, mate, your skills weren't good enough today, mate. Your skills are just not good enough. You need to work on them. And I'd say, yep, no worries, I'll do that. But then in front of the boys, he says, Gets, amazing, mate. You were amazing today.
The result? A Wallabies squad that looked lost, directionless, and mentally fragile. In the end, the pressure became too much. After just 9 months, Eddie Jones walked away. Another coaching change for the Wallabies, another crisis for Rugby Australia. This was the price of dealing with Eddie Jones. And Eddie, well, he didn't waste any time. In 2024, he officially rejoined Japan as head coach, moving on before the dust had even settled. What will his legacy be? The mastermind who changed the game, or the coach who played too many high-stakes gambles and lost? One thing's for sure, his tenure with the Wallabies in 2023 will go down as one of the most controversial and chaotic periods in Australian rugby history. So, what do you think? Was Eddie Jones the problem, or was he just a scapegoat for a deeper crisis in Australian rugby? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more deep dives into rugby's biggest stories. Stay tuned.